Good morning, beloved. What is it, Wednesday morning? Good to be here. The week has been shaping up nice. They were promising us that we were going to have a bunch of snow. Mrs. W said, you know it's going to snow tomorrow, yesterday. And I said, I don't think so, and it hasn't. But they're saying maybe tomorrow. Jack and I went on a nice ride. It was the first big ride of the day. It turned into, of the spring, it turned into a pretty big ride, and it was plenty cold. But it was nice to get out there with him. I shared some of that to the members. This morning, before we jump into Super Chats and you guys' comments and takes, I want to cover body armor a little bit. Body armor, if this is something that you're hearing for the first time, it may seem really outlandish to you that you would even have a need for this. That's just crazy talk. And I'll tell you, 6 years ago, I would have said the same thing. I thought the same thing about helmets and a lot of things, but the world is changing. And the industry has changed a lot as well. It's coming down in price. The technology is getting really good. And what's really cool are the discrete options. I have, up until recently, I'll be sharing some stuff with you today that is incredibly sleek and reasonably, and I think pretty affordable. Right now, you won't even be able to see it. I'm wearing level 3A body armor, or I don't know if I have the jargon right, sufficient body armor to stop modern handguns, which is what you're typically going to run into. Very light, very thin. You don't even know it's on. It's really incredible. So I wanted to cover a few options, and as sad as it is to say, there are options, and parents might want to consider body armor backpack or inserts for their kids. And that's the world that we live in. Unfortunately, no one is looking at the reason why we're having these young men doing, acting out. I have to be careful what I say here. You know what we're talking about, They're not getting to the solution. The reason is pretty simple. When you have a society that doesn't give young men any hope of ever owning a home, any hope of ever being able to buy land, hope of having a potential mate and raising a family, desperation sets in, and we're going to see more and more of that. And there doesn't seem to be a whole lot. There isn't really even an awakening amongst the masses that understand the plight of the young men in this country, especially white young men, and how difficult their situation is and how desperate it is. And a lot of them are going to be acting out, and it is what it is, so we can do one of two things. We can not prepare, we can prepare. So if you have little ones, they're carrying backpacks anyway. I hate to get into this. I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, but there are some good options that I'll share with you today. So let's get into that really quickly. So when I first got into body armor, of course I went full military route, which you guys have seen before, which would be rifle plates. Ceramic rifle plates. Pretty bulky, pretty heavy, would be fine for wearing on the battlefield, or if you're out training or doing a mission or something, but just really not suitable and not appropriate in an urban environment if you want to be discreet. Yeah, I mean, there's some guys that might be wearing this out there, but really, come on now. I mean, you're going to be drawing a lot of attention to yourself. Yes, you can cover it up. Yes, you can put it under particular clothing, maybe wearing a down jacket, but the hard edges, it prints really bad, especially on the back. Anyone who knows anything is going to single you out, and it's very difficult to hide. And the second thing is, does a guy really need rifle protection? Is that the threat you're going to run into? Yeah, typically not. Most violent crimes and things that we're going to be encountering on the streets are going to be handgun calibers. You just don't see dudes packing rifles around so much unless you're in O Block. And I don't know about you, but I don't live in O Block. So this is nice to have, a good thing, but I don't know, knowing what I know now and being a little bit more informed, don't know that I would start with that route. So we're going to cover basically two options. You're going to look at pistol rounds and you're going to look at rifle rounds. And that's two separate things. When it comes down to cost, what's it cost to buy good stuff? Now, what I'm going to share with you is going to be good stuff, USA made. the best quality stuff you can rely upon, not anything sketch or suspect. So yeah, you might be able to go find some stuff cheaper. Obviously, you'll be able to find steel plates cheaper. We're not talking about any of that. We're talking about real quality, nice stuff for a reasonable price. So as a rule of thumb, if you want something like I'm wearing right now, front and back protection, which I'll show you here, you're going to be looking at about just under $300. $250 to $300 is going to get you protection for most modern handguns in a discreet package that you'll be able to wear anywhere without anyone knowing that you even have it on, just like I have on right now, which you would never be able to tell. Now, the next step up from that is going to be hard plates. Hard plates are going to be stop most common rifle. You know, our 7.62, 5.56, not everything, but majority of it, you know, similar to what the military guys are going to be wearing. This is going to run you, for just the 2 plates, about $300 per plate, just as a rule of thumb. You'll be able to find deals and pick up things here and there, but just so you kind of know what you're at. Add another $150 onto that for a plate carrier, so let's say $750. So $750 for a plate carrier that's decent, you'll be able to carry some magazines, 2 rifle plates, and about $250 to $300 for a discreet vest, shirt, what have you, right? Does that kind of lay it out for you? So let's start with the smallest lightweight stuff, and I'll show you what I'm wearing. This is the one that I'm really excited about. This is something that this is what I'm going to be wearing and using. Yes, I'll have rifle plates in my go bag, depending on where I'm at in the truck, but I'm not wearing those out to dinner. I'm not wearing those out in public. I mean, come on, it's just not happening. But this, I can. This is made by Premier, and this is level 3A. And this is all USA made DuPont Kevlar. Look how thin it is. I mean, it's as thin as a piece of cardboard. It's an incredible technology and pretty good coverage. You can see right there, pretty good coverage. It's awfully, I should probably sit up a little higher. It's pretty deep. It's pretty deep right there. That's going to cover that whole thoracic region right there, front and back. So how do you apply this? How do you wear it? The hardest thing with this armor are the edges. These edges are sharp, and when you're putting a garment over them, that's what you see. You see that outline just as clear as day, and that's what we're trying to avoid here. So having this be super thin, like it is perfect for that situation. But even with that, it's going to have a little bit of edge on there. So what you can do when you're trying to hide something like that, you want to wear patterns that break up. Excuse me, that break up all of the lines, i.e. plaids. Plaids like the flannel shirts that I wear. That's perfect thing for concealed carry because it's like a camouflage. All of those different lines and stuff break things up and you don't see the clean lines like you would on a t-shirt. So how I'm wearing this, I'll just show you. It's going to mess with my microphone a little bit, but is this a shirt? Oops. Goodness, I didn't think this one out very well. It's just a short sleeve t-shirt. You see right here? It's a short sleeve t-shirt made out of, it's a similar product. It feels kind of like an Under Armour. So it's a compression shirt and it's got a pocket sewn on the inside of it that this panel slides up in right here, just like that. And the same thing on the back. And what's really nice about this is if you see this material on the edges, it looks a little bit funny, but that is kind of, it's got a little bit of thickness to it, and what it does is it helps to roll over those hard edges on those plates. And that takes that away. It makes that transition a lot smoother. But this setup right here from Premier, and I'm going to be doing a video on this. I just want to give you guys a little preview before we get started. I'll be doing a video on this today, and we'll go over detail on that, a long-form video of this stuff, and I'll share with you what I know about it. But that changes that transition right there, and this is something that you could wear out. This is something that I'm going to have in the closet that I'll put on summer, winter. There's just no reason not to have it, you know, especially when you go in the city, front and back. And this right now is about, I think when I checked it this morning, was about $275, and you get both plates of armor, American made, and the compression shirt. So I'm pretty excited about this option. It's actually quite good. I have 2 of these shirts. The middleman contacted Premier and got this sent out for us to share. So you can make sure you give a shout out to them because it was something I was interested in. I didn't have, I can't throw all the money at this sort of thing. I just don't need all this stuff. But I wanted to. They put this together so we could share it. So I have a white one and a black one. So whatever you want. So that's a pretty cool option. And just real quickly before we get started. There's a lot of options that you may not have considered or even knew was possible, but let's see. So this is a really common bag. Some of you guys probably have one of these. If you have a short barrel, like a Mark 18, a 10-3 barrel carbine, as you know, this is the Vertex Gamut. It will fit without breaking it down if you have a folding stock. So this is a really popular bag. I think this is one of their more popular bags. This is my favorite one of all the Vertexes. But what they also offer through Premier is if you look in the back of these things, they have a sleeve. And they have corresponding armor plates that go in there, both styles. So if we look here, there we go. There's the Gamut. So here's the armor for the Gamut right there. So this is going to be your pistol. And how that works is that's going to slide in the back there, and you're going to button that up, and now you essentially have a bulletproof backpack. Now you could wear this on the front if you had to. You've seen people at the airport wearing packs on the front. If you needed that, if you needed to rush into a situation, if the cops are waiting outside and not rescuing your children, and you went in there to do it because you were the only one with courage, would be a very nice thing to have, would it not? It's not ideal, but it's an option. Or, God forbid, if you're sending your kids to school with book bags and such, this is a very lightweight option that they could hide behind. That would be in the back would be, it's a personal choice. It's something you'll have to talk about with your family and figure out. But if you want to even extend that, there are options, just so you know. You could even put rifle plates in them. So if you just wanted to have, you didn't really have need of a tactical vest or anything like that, this is a backpack inserted rifle plate. You can see it's going to be thicker, but very lightweight. I'm guessing this probably weighs about 2 pounds. And with the combination of these two, that's a pretty good deal, and that will fit in there. And now you have essentially a rifle-proof backpack. So a lot of different options, just to put it out there, just so you can kind of see what they are. And, even some pretty innovative things. I mean, if you wanted to go really, really small, they even make them for the small. This is my Traveler, my Vertex Traveler. This is my enhanced EDC, what I put on. This is a sling bag. A lot of us like the sling bags, because you can carry a lot of things in it, and it has a dedicated EDC, or not EDC, but CCW pouch here, right, that we can draw from. And there's an option for a small armor plate right there that is made to fit inside there. And you're saying, well, what good will that do? It's so small. Well, this is designed in a pinch. Again, this is not ideal, but I'm just saying, options are nice. If you needed an option, this is designed to be, you shorten the neck strap and put the waist strap around you, a miniature chest rig right here that you'd have access for magazine holders or whatever you wanted. It's just options. If you just didn't, if it's all you had, that's the way I set this up. Be able to grab this and have a couple extra magazines, have an IFAK in there, but that little plate fits in there in the back. And as small as it is, it still has pretty good coverage. It's going to cover your heart. It's going to cover the majority of your lungs right there. You can survive being shot in the shoulder, and stomach is as bad as it is, but at least it's not going to end you immediately. So I'm excited about this, especially this low profile stuff, like the compression shirt. That to me is a very usable piece of kit. And most people, if you're serious about this sort of thing, and you already have, your firearms in place, and you have a good carbine, and you have the things that you need, and a few magazines, the logical next step would be to go into getting yourself a good armored shirt like this. And 275, 279 around there with both plates is a pretty good deal. So anyway, more on this later. I'll be shooting that after the live stream. But I'm excited to share that with you. It's that stuff from Premier is really nice. And the more I look into the company, they're a good company, USA-made company, and good people over there. Okay, goodness. Let me jump into here. I'm not prepared. Nothing but the best production around here. We have a brand new member, Mr. Dylan C. Dylan C. kicking it off. Shout out to you, Dylan. I sure do appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. I've got some special content for you guys. The members, I've got some goodies coming up for you guys. I have the LaRue triggers just showed up, and I haven't even unboxed them yet. So I'll unbox those. We'll unbox those together today after the stream, and that will be for members. So you guys can come over, hang over there, or come over and hang out with me, and we can check that out. I have never put my hands on one, so I'm kind of excited to see it. So shout out to you, Dylan. Welcome, welcome. Goodness, Overton just broke the internet. A $500 super chat. I don't know what to say, but brother, thank you so much. Goodness. Morning members, email me to join the 24/7 chat. Yeah, Overton's making it happen behind the scenes. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. Goodness. Overton are getting in us, or Overton and I are kind of getting into a competition of outdoing each other here. I'm going to be thinking of what I'm going to be sending you, so it'll just we'll just keep reciprocating. But thank you, brother. I sure appreciate that. Man, goodness, as if you didn't do enough already. That's very humbling to me. Thank you, brother. We have a super chat from Mr. Forrest Marsh, and he writes, "Unintended Consequences" by John Ross. Great read. Unintended consequences. You know, I need to get, tomorrow, hopefully I can remember, I'm going to get a pad and paper here. I'm going to write down all these good recommendations that you guys give me. But I'll add that to my reading list. Unintended Consequences, John Ross. We have a member message from Mr. Ryan Warren. Shout out to you, Ryan. Welcome, welcome. Ryan says, "Hey, Cody, have you heard of the ramp rack? It's for loading dirt bikes and such into a truck, a lot safer than the aluminum ramps. Welcome back." I haven't, man, but I'm all about that. You know, I broke my leg on one of those stupid things, was it last winter? And I have the good one. So a funny thing, as I was convalescing from, I've been doing a lot of convalescing this last year or so. When I was convalescing from that, of course, I spent a lot of time on the internet, and I was looking at ramps and different things, and I couldn't go snow biking, and so I was watching interviews and different things. And what was funny about that, if you don't know what a snow bike is a 450 dirt bike, 500, usually a bigger one, that you put a snow track on, and you take the front tire off and put a ski on, right? Most of you guys have seen it. Well, I watched this one, I think it was Yeti on their site that makes them. They interviewed their pro riders. They have 4 or 5 pro riders, male and female, and they asked them the question, all these questions: what do you like about snow biking? What do you dislike? What's the worst thing, a part of snow biking? And it was unanimous. But you know what it was? The worst part of snow biking was loading. Loading the thing is the worst part. And man, I get that. That's how I got hurt doing that. And I have a big wide ramp, so I'll look into that. I didn't realize until I got in, I talked to my surgeon, that after I broke my femur, he said, "Oh man," he goes, that happens a lot, especially guys your age. They get up and they're falling off their trucks. And you know, trucks are getting so much bigger now. Like, I remember Granddad's truck. The last truck he had, he bought it brand new from the Ford dealership. It was a 1977 Ford 2-wheel drive camper special with an 8-foot bed on it. And I wished he would have got the 4-wheel drive, especially when we hunted out of it for so many years. We were always dealing with tire chains. And I asked him, I like, "Granddad, why didn't you get a 4-wheel drive?" He was just so practical. He's like, "Well, I rarely use it, and I don't want to pay to push, you know, the extra gas and the wear and tear to push that front axle and all the extra transfer case and the drive shafts and all that around. That just doesn't make any sense for something I'm going to use once a year." You know, you can't argue that. You really can't argue that. I mean, he got by his whole life. He hunted out of sedans you know, before I mean, he didn't have a truck until, it wasn't until the mid 60s or so before he got a truck, but he had sedans, four-door sedans, family cars, like Galaxies and such, and him and his brother, that's what they hunted out of. I mean, times were just so different. Things were so much simpler. Everything has to be so perfect now and so specialized. I mean, it started a little bit when I was a kid, you know, but even before, when I was just little, learning how to ride a bike, there was either you had a bike or you didn't have a bike. There was one type of bike. There was maybe a man's bike, a woman's bike, and there were a kid's bike. I mean, really, for the most part, a bike was a bike was a bike. Now, look at what you have. I mean, even if you just segregate the mountain bike disciplines. I mean, there's not just one mountain bike. There's cross country, and then there's tricks, and then there's downhill, and there's special bikes for gravel and special fat tire bike. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how specialized everything is. I don't know what the point was there. I was just, ramps, whatever. We have a super chat from the Soviet Tanker. Shout out to you, Soviet Tanker. Soviet Tanker writes, keep up the great work, my man. You're truly inspired. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for hanging out here, and thank you, Soviet Tanker, for your support. Oh, yep, we got a Premier 10% off there, and I will share that for you. So if you're interested in the armor, just wait. Don't buy anything, and I'll do a full video, and we'll cover all. I got a whole bunch of stuff. They sent me a whole bunch of stuff that I'll be sharing with you, and I'll give you my takes and my first impressions on it. We have a super chat from Brandon Auga. He's been with us, a member for 1 month. Shout out to you, Brandon. He has a question on tech. What is a good entry-level setup, mic, camera, and tripod for beginners? YouTube. Well, you know what? If I was a beginner, you probably already have a phone. And the phones are really good now. The problem with the phones, I could run my whole channel from a phone. I could edit with it. I use Apple. I have an Apple 14. I could use editing software. I could do all that thing, and I could plug in an external microphone. The most important thing, more important than the camera, is the audio, and that's what's oftentimes underrated, or you don't put the money into it. I would start with clean audio. Here's the deal with that. You can have your light not right, your white balance off, your composition's not too good. It doesn't really make that much difference. If you have good, clean, warm audio, people will stay and watch. But you can have the best red cinema camera, the RE, whatever, $100,000 camera. And there's been a lot of tests, some fun tests on YouTube about this, where they took the most expensive camera with the perfect studio lighting, where everything was just super, super good, with marginal sketchy audio, and then they did the flip with a cheapo camera, but really clean, good audio, and people vote on it. Which one do you prefer? Which one would you watch? And always, 10 out of 10, it's the one with the clean audio. So that's where you want to start. I would buy once, cry once when it comes to audio. I would buy, you need two mics. You need basically an on-camera mic that's going to be like a shotgun style mic. So just go get a Rode Video Mic Pro. It's going to run you about $300 to buy one of those, and they're very good. Now, with that being said, they're really good up to about 5 or 6 feet from the camera, and you need to be facing it, and you need to be talking to it directly. If you turn your head or you're moving away, it all falls apart and it's trash. It's only for something like what we're doing right here. If I was sitting in front of the camera and I had one of those no more than 3, 4, 5 feet pushing it, then that's what you can go with that. That's nice, it's convenient because you don't have any wires, you don't have any, it's on the camera, it's grab and go, it's pretty easy. And if you're doing blogs type of stuff where you're behind the camera and you're shooting stuff, just flip it around. You can flip it around so it's facing you, and then you have good, really good clean audio up to 4 or 5 feet. People think that that's going to project a long ways and they can just slap one of those Video Mic Pros on their camera and that's going to be good. It is not. It's not. I rarely use one. I haven't used one, I'll bet, for a year, to be honest with you. So that's one option. But the better option is a good lavalier mic. A lavalier mic is going to be mounted right here. I run a double one here, too. right here on your lapel. I remember when I first went to a lavalier mic, and it completely changed the whole tenor and the feel of my channel, and it completely changed my connection with you guys, with subscribers. Before, when I had an on-camera microphone, I was always talking at it, shouting at it, because in the edit I was always disappointed because I was usually working. I'm turning and I was working in the shop, or I'm running over here grabbing things, and the audio was trash. I realized I had to do something about it. It just didn't work at all, and I would be trying to turn my head unnaturally and projecting my voice at it, and it was very unnatural, and I didn't like it at all, but I just didn't know any better. That's what people did, and that's what I went and bought one of those things, right? When I got a lavalier mic that clipped right here on the lapel, that changed everything. Now I'm talking in a normal voice. Now I'm just having a conversation like I would if someone was in my shop looking over my shoulder, we were sharing something, or we were working together, or is a teacher-student type of situation where you can just have a normal conversation with people. It's very authentic, it's very sincere, and it's the way that we communicate. And that comes across really well in videos, and it gives you a lot of freedom. A good lavalier mic will give you a good 100, 150 feet of range from your camera. So if you're active and you're moving and you're turning around, you always will have nice, clean audio. And the other thing is, if you have multiple people, if you want to bring a friend or do an interview, or you want to bring your wife in to do something together, then you can put one on her, and you can run those in 2-channel that way as well. So I would just bite the bullet, spend the $300, and get the Sennheiser AVX. I have 6 of them. I'm wearing 2 right now. The Sennheiser AVX is going to be very simple for you. It's got good battery. The battery will last a long time. It syncs up immediately, so you don't have to worry about channels and matching and numbers and all that stuff, and it just has worked flawless. I've been using them now for about 5 years or so, the Sennheiser AVXs, and I have not one bad thing to say about them. Made in Germany, all metal construction. If you are the type of content creator where you're out working and you're sharing stuff in the shop and you're outside, you're going to put a lot of wear and tear on your equipment. Now, the mistake that I made when I was first getting into it is I bought cheap. I bought cheap, and then that broke, and then I bought prosumer grade, and that broke, and then I ended up buying full professional gear. Now, had I just bought one good tripod at the beginning, then I would not have had to go through that process, which ultimately cost me twice as much as it would have been had I just bought something decent to get started. So if you're just getting started and you don't know you're going to do it, I would not go crazy with the pro gear, but here's what I would do. I would get myself a very good Manfrotto tripod. Go on to Facebook Marketplace. There's going to be all those photography guys, you know how they are. I mean, they're always upgrading to the latest, greatest thing. Get a Manfrotto tripod, something that's pretty stable if you're going to put a camera on it, and start with that. That's a good base. That's a tripod that will last you a long time. Get one that's got the 3 extension legs on it, so you can get it up to about 5-6 feet of height. And if you can get a carbon one, the better. Carbons are going to cost a little bit more, but they're so lightweight and they're a lot easier to pack around, and it takes a toll on you packing all the equipment around. So I'd start with that. Sennheiser AVX lav mic, a good tripod with a good phone mount. Get something from Really Right Stuff or Pro Media Gear. Buy once, cry once with that stuff. Even your phone mount, get something that's good that you can flip both ways, because you're going to want to be doing short content and regular content. So make sure whatever you get, if you're going to use your phone or your camera, that it has the capability to do that. And that's what I'd start with. If you don't want to use your phone and you've got your Sennheiser AVX and you've got your tripod, your good Manfrotto tripod, then what I would buy would be a Canon DSLR camera that was about 1 or 2 generations back. And it would be the D series, like a D80, a D90. Those come out every 18 months or so. And like I said, the camera bugs, those guys, they got to have the latest, greatest, and they're always upgrading, and they're dumping their stuff for a good deal. So get yourself a good DSLR camera that's 1 or 2 generations back. Buy 3 batteries, and don't buy the cheap batteries. Only buy Canon batteries. Only Canon batteries. Did you hear me? Only Canon batteries. It's going to be tempting because the other ones are half the price, but only Canon batteries. And the lens you want is about a 24 to 70 or a 16 to 35. Those are the two lenses you're primarily going to use. If you're going to be working inside a small area, if you have a small shop or you're doing gunsmithing or just a small area, 16 to 35 millimeter. If you have a larger shop and you want a little bit of telephoto capability to get out there and to maybe pull something in or have the camera off a little bit, then you're going to want that 24 to 70. That's the sweet spot. Or a 24 to 105 is good as well. So that's what I'd recommend. There's a lot to this. We could go on for ages about this, but Canon DSLR, 2 or 3 generations back, Manfrotto carbon tripod, Sennheiser AVX lav mic system, and a good mount of some sort. If you want a good mount to buy once, cry once, if you want the best video mount I've ever used, it's a Miller. It's going to run you about $300. Just get the smallest one. It's fluid filled. It will give you a pan feature. It's excellent, excellent mount. I will, if there's interest from the members, if this is a member question, I will do a video on my setup. My setup is really clean and really refined. It's really dialed in. I've been doing this for over a decade now, and I'm very particular about these things. And what my goal is when I'm setting up studio equipment, for whether it be for live streaming or short content, live content, it cannot be fiddly. It cannot prevent me from doing what I want to do. It needs to be an extension of me. It needs to work 100% of the time, always flawlessly, without me ever having to think about it. I don't want to think about losing audio. I don't want to think about camera lenses and bodies that don't automatic focus, and I don't want to worry about batteries that won't last long enough, or mounts or video heads that are not strong enough to support cameras. I don't want any of that. Everything's got to be it's got to get out of my way so that I can work. I want to be creative. I have an idea. I'm trying to make the idea happen. The equipment needs to work with me, and not be against me. And what I did, the progression that I made is I thought, when I first started getting into it, I thought that if I could just get the right camera and get the right gizmo and gadget, that would take everything up to the next level. Well, it got so complicated. Now I'm recording audio on separate channels, on separate devices. I mean, just to set up, like to do a video, I was like an hour and a half of putting up lights and work, just massive complication. Like a guy trying to run a whole video studio that would normally have 4, 5, 6 people to do it. I'm trying to do it myself and be the talent, and it was ridiculous. And I would remember waking up thinking I just didn't even want to do it because it was so much effort just to make content. So I went completely the other direction. I said, okay, well, let's strip it down. Let's lay out all of this garbage, all of the stuff that you've bought, and let's see how can you do what you need to do with the fewest amount of components. And that's really what I've come down to. I can do a 3-camera shoot with 3 separate cameras, interviews, I could mic up to 4 people with everything that fits in a box about 2 shoe boxes, not including the tripod, with grip and everything. That's how refined I've got it down, where I could grab that and go anywhere and do that. And that took a long time to come to that, because I spent years and years fiddling with overcomplicated equipment when you don't need to. Tripod, and if you're going to you might need a light. You're probably going to need a light. I wouldn't invest in a lot of lighting. Lighting can get expensive, and that's a whole nother discipline to learn on your own. Just get yourself a couple of the shop lights like you get at Home Depot. The aluminum, the dishes that you put a bulb in there. Get a soft white, a warmer color, more of a yellow color, more of a sunlight type of color, and a piece of craft paper, like I don't know what you call it, that wax paper type of stuff. It's kind of opaque. Clip it on there with a couple of clothespins to diffuse it. You don't want the harsh lights on your face, and you just have to remember 2 things when it comes to lighting. Light right over your camera for beauty, and light from a side with shadows over here for drama. I mean, that's basically it. Usually men are lit from this angle to accentuate their jaws and their features, to make them look more masculine. The light comes in here, throws shadows on these sides, But women don't like that because it brings out imperfections. And for beauty, usually you put your light right over your camera, and that's how you light women. Because the light now is coming directly at the face, and it's not highlighting all of these shadows. I'm lighting from above here, and you can see, it looks like I have, my face is definitely getting older, but you can see, looks like I have really big jowls. In person, it doesn't look near that bad, but because the light is above me over the cameras, that creates shadows here and it accentuates that. So there's a lot to lighting, and I just am barely have a grasp of it. That's a whole nother conversation that I'm not qualified to share with. But I hope that helps. Mr. Kristaman Pavlik, new member, welcome. Shout out to you, Shout out to you, Christopher. You can tell where your passion lies when you get a comment and you go off on a tangent like that, can't you? When I go off on tangents on dirt biking and guns and photography. I guess those are my three things. Mr. Tony Bologna, welcome. Good to see you back. Tony's been with us for 2 months. He says, just happy to be here. Thanks, Cody. Thanks, Middleman. Shout out to the group chat. Yes. And Addie, our newest member. Welcome, Addie. Welcome. You get to join us for the new LaRue triggers. I'm excited. I'm going to do those as soon as we get done with the live stream. I'm excited to get in there and get going on that. We have a super chat from our friend Dan. Shout out to you, Dan. Dan says, have you ever looked into Brenna less lethal launchers? I think you'd really like them. No, I have not. What is a Brenna launcher? I don't know what that is. I'll look into that. Mr. Overton, he keeps these comments up for me for a little while so I can go back there and I'll look into that. But thank you for your generosity and that recommendation. I'll look into that, Dan. Mr. Matthew C., thank you. That was very generous of you. Matthew writes, tells us he went out yesterday and bought his first firearm. Looked at a ton of different stuff, but your recommendation on the G19X really well-founded. Is that what you got? Do you modify your Glocks at all or leave it stock? Trigger, comp, grip, sights, etc. Man, shout out to you, Matthew. You chose wisely. You didn't make the mistakes that many of us make by going into a gun store uninformed and letting the particular hobby horse of the gun store employee or whatever steer you in a particular direction. You bought the right one. And the middlemen will attest to you. It was funny, when the middlemen, we were doing some show and tell a couple months ago back on our Signal app and sharing different personal carry and stuff. And several of the middlemen, are, if they don't already have the 19Xs, are definitely in the market for them. Here's my thought on modification with the Glocks. I would leave it alone. I have done all the modifications. I have done the ghost trigger bars. I've done swapped out the aquatic cups. I've swapped out the different springs, the barrels, that whole thing, the extended slide lock handles. I'm extended mag releases. I know it. All that stuff. I've done all of that. Did it enhance anything? No. What I found out was, for example, let's take the extended magazine release. It's really popular. The magazine release is on the thumb, and the one that's on there, you can get an extended one that sticks that out really far, and it gives you the ability to get a better handhold on it. Well, two problems with that, right? There's a lot of thought that goes into those things. More thought than you've put into it, or I've combined, and everyone here. And things are typically done for a reason. Once in a while, you can come across an accessory that is truly an enhancement and improvement, i.e. like for the AR platform, to upgrade to a good trigger. A LaRue trigger, a Geisley trigger, whatever. There are a lot of good ones out there. That's something worth doing. Or to upgrade your bolt carrier group with a crane to get more ejection, with the O-ring upgrade and such, which I'll be sharing with the members as well. I got those here as well. There's a few things that actually do improve, but most of the stuff take away reliability and usability. So I immediately did the same thing. I went out and bought all that crap and put it on there, right? Well, what I found was in stressful situations, i.e., really more advanced pistol training courses and such, that became a huge liability. It was always getting bumped and knocking the magazine on the floor. I went from never dropping magazines in stressful situations to routinely dropping magazines in stressful situations because of that extended magazine release, just for example. So I took it off. That's gone. I don't use that anymore. Also, depending on how you're built, it's going to be different. Well, you might be carrying inside the waistband. Inside the waistband, now you've got that big nub sticking out there, hard plastic digging into you the whole time. It's very uncomfortable. And that in itself can depend, if you're a little overweight, that can push on that and eject that magazine. That could be out. You could pull it out and it could fall on the ground. So not a fan of those sort of things as well. The extended magazine, the extended slide lock from the factory Glock part, I'll give a concession to that. I don't put it on my 19X, I don't have it on there, but I have it on my 26. Just gives you a little bit of a nub. It's a little bit easier to do that. Would I do it again? Probably not. It doesn't make that much difference. Cosmetic things that could get you into trouble. One concern that some people have, and this debate goes round and round and round, that God forbid you had to pull that hog leg and defend yourself and someone died. Even if it was a clean shoot, even if you were fully justified in everything that you did, you're going to be going through hell for the next year, year and a half, because the family will put a civil suit upon you. Because they'll be, especially if you have anything, if you own a home or anything, you could just about guarantee they'll do it. It's not a criminal thing, but it's a civil thing. And if that goes in front of a what do I call it? What do you call it? A trial, a jury, right? They're going to crawl all over your particular handgun with a fine-tooth comb. They're going to be the defense. They're going to look for anything that could be illegal, anything that you modified, anything to paint you in a negative light in any way. For example, can you imagine how foolish it would be, as I've seen some people do, to take the end of the barrel and have it engraved, smile, wait for flash? Or if you were to remove the rear cover plate on the slide and replace the factory one with the logo of a Punisher on it. Or you were to use a particular carry ammo that was exceedingly nasty, like some of those are out there, or with some big hyperbolic name, like Slayer ammo or something like that. Even though you have every right to do these things, if you have a Karen or a couple Karens in the jury pool, how are they going to look at that Punisher logo on there? How are they going to look about that you took the time to engrave smile, wait for flash? How are they going to take it that you're using some sort of an exotic ammo? Do you think a defense or prosecuting attorney could not have a field day with that and paint you into as a vigilante, as a nut? Absolutely, you could see that happening, right? So you don't want to give them any ammunition. You don't want to give them. You want to keep that thing, and this is my opinion. I mean, we're just having a discussion here. I'm sorry. Sometimes I tend to come off as like I'm the authority here. I'm not the authority. I have thought about this a lot. I've talked to people in depth about this, and I'm just sharing what I've come up with. But I respect you to make your own decision. I just want you to I just want to give you some data so that you can make the best decision. It seems to me, just to wrap all this up, it seems to me if you were I would rather go in there, if they're going to be crawling all over this or combing over this 19X with a fine-tooth comb that was absolutely stock, that you hadn't changed anything. And not only that, I would select my defensive ammunition according to whatever law enforcement is using in your area. Don't get anything weird or anything like that. Ask a cop, go talk to the sheriff, whatever. Ask them, what are you guys using in your personal defensive kit? What are you guys using? Is it Spear Gold Dot? Is it Talon? What is it? Is it Winchester? To find out what that is, and that's what you get. Because that whole argument that you're a vigilante or you were just going above and beyond, that you had you were trying to hurt someone, your attorney, or you could just point to the fact, hey, I just used the same stuff that law enforcement uses. And that conversation's over, completely over. And if you didn't modify the thing, and I mean, even a trigger, if you were to lighten up the trigger, most people are ignorant. Yes, I understand. If I was sitting on your jury and you were fighting for your life, I would understand these things and I would take them into account. But do you think that most uninformed people, which the majority of people are, do you think that they're going to see it this way? No, they're gonna take you for a nut and a kook. So you're already going to be at a disadvantage if you find yourself in that situation. Don't exacerbate the problem by modifying that CCW. Now, if it's a race gun, goodness, that mountain water is beyond belief. If it's a race gun for a 3-gun competition, if you're doing that sort of thing, do whatever you want to. That's a whole different deal. But shout out to you, Matthew. Goodness, man, you are stoked. I would put a light on it. Put an X300 light on it. Get a Surefire. If that's not in the budget, get yourself a Stream Light, TLR series. Those are really good as well. And you're good to go, man. Done. One and done. We have a super chat from General Buck Turgidson. Shout out to you. Speaking of the General, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not. I'll tell you. We're all family here, right? I am going to be on General Sam's podcast coming up. I don't know when, but we're doing, him and I are recording it tonight. So it might not be kid friendly, so I'm warning you about that. It's going to be the most unusual collaboration that was probably ever done on YouTube. General Sam and myself. But I like General Sam. He's crass, but I like him. Anyway, I'm looking forward to that. I'll let you know when that's going to post when I find out. But General Buck writes, Unintended Consequences is a must-read for any patriot. Great recommendation for that enemies, foreign and domestic, Matthew Bracken. Okay, that's good. Well, I'm going to bump that up on my list. It's going to be about number 10. I've got my summer reading list I'm building up. But thank you for that recommendation. Always good to have a good book recommendation. We have a super chat from Irvish Patel. Irvish writes, I know in one live stream you said NC man doesn't belong in the group of East Coast men, or North Carolina man doesn't belong in the group of East Coast men, and you got sidetracked. I was wondering if you could elaborate. Well, yes, I can elaborate. So, as you know, East Coast man is inferior to West Coast man, right? So I have been made an exceptions, or at least his environment. So I originally gave Vermont West Coast status, so that if you were from Vermont, you could officially claim yourself in the pro-ho movement here as an official West Coast man. It's a state of mind, so to speak, because of my man Styx Hexenhammer, because I like him and he's a Vermont man, even though he's living in the Netherlands. So he redeemed Vermont and pulled it out of the muck, which is the East Coast. Well, North Carolina man rose to the occasion as well. Actually, several of the middlemen are from North Carolina, and when they sent me that beautiful Douglas fir-inspired lockback or folding knife, and I saw the quality that North Carolina man was capable of producing, well, that elevated him too. And he, right there, that one example pulled North Carolina man out of the muck and the mud of the East Coast as well. So he also has West Coast status. So if you're from North Carolina, you come and receive your reward. You have it. You have official status here. Now, it's kind of like a Kentucky colonel. It's not going to carry a whole lot of weight in other places, but for right here, for me, it means a lot. Shout out to North Carolina man. And we have a new member, Mr. D. Renz. D. Renz, shout out to you. Goodness. Good to see you here. I'm going to make sure that I have some good stuff for you guys. We have a super chat from T. Wilson, V-Twin. He's been with us for a month now. Shout out to you. That's a very generous super chat. Thank you very much. And he writes, your resident North Carolinian here. I just got my first pair of Pacific Northwest boots. Now you see, did I not just tell you that North Carolina man is above reproach? It's not his fault that he's on the East Coast. He is West Coast at heart. Look at that. He's even got the right boots on. He knows which side his bread is buttered on. He got a pair of JK lineman boots, and man, are my feet thanking me. Thank you for your many Pacific Northwest boot videos. Have some nicks Yeah, so that's very interesting, and that just man, I'm derelict in this. So J.K. Boots is an incredible local company here that I just became made aware of, a family-run business. They were reaching out to me they invited me to come out to their place, and well, I don't know if it was so much of that, is they just reached out to say, hey, we know you've done some work with Nick's. We like your channel. Would you be interested in doing something? You know, maybe we could do a signature boot or something. And I forgot all about them. I mentioned this before the convalescent time there. I'll reach out to them. JK I'm excited to see their boots. They make some really nice boots, and they have a great story. Family-run business. The father started it. His boys are working there. One of his I think his youngest boy reached out to me, and see, his dad is from the old world, his old school. You know, he learned bootmaking the hard way, the old way, and he's very much a stickler. And he handed this down through his sons. So it's been kind of a small, obscure local bootmaker that only if you knew, you knew. You know, people on the inside kind of knew about it. I hadn't even heard of them before, and I'm pretty well plugged into local bootmakers and such. Well, his youngest son, you know, a new generation, is a little bit more internet savvy, and he's trying to get the word out on these boots, and he reached out to me. So I will, oh goodness, I got to remember, I forgot all about that. I'm going to reach out to them. It would be fun. What I'd like to do is Mrs. W and I, we could take a trip over there, and I'd like to go through the process and see their shop. I think last time we spoke, I think they would be open to letting us take our cameras in there and go through there and show you guys how a proper Pacific Northwest boot made, which are the best boots in the world. Yeah, JK. Hey, man, thanks for the reminder. Good choice on that. Good choice on that. Boy, you're stoked. Oh, I feel bad now. I forgot about those guys. All right, I'll remedy that. Thank you for that super chat. And we have a new member, D. Renz. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, D. Renz. We're glad to have you here. Kyle McLean, our newest member. Welcome, Kyle. And Brandon Bursey is a new member. What about us New Hampshire men? Well, what have you done for me lately, Mr. New Hampshire man? Or what have you done for humanity? I don't know anything about New Hampshire. New Hampshire. Like, I'm trying to, I was going to speak the first word that comes into my mind when I think of New Hampshire. It is like a blank slate. I know nothing of New Hampshire. I don't even know where it is. Is it in the Northeast? New Hampshire, man. I'm of absolutely no opinion of New Hampshire, man. I'm suspect, of course, because just from your general proximity to East Coast, man. So I would not necessarily give you the benefit of the doubt. But if New Hampshire, man, could prove to me in some way that he is worthy of a West Coast celebrity, then I will consider it. But I have seen nothing so far. So you've got your work cut out for you. Prove to me why New Hampshire man should make that elite list that Vermont man and North Carolina man has made. Because they have made it for certain. Get to work. We have a super chat from Robert Cabana. Robert's been with us for 2 months. Shout out to you, Robert. Welcome. Robert says, me and New Hampshire beat Vermont Skull in 10 times out of 10. Is that right? See, I'm from West Coast. We think that we're the center of the world, so we don't even know where you guys are at. Is that Maine? What is ME? Oh, public school. My public education rears its ugly head. Well, you may say so, but talk is cheap. And I haven't seen anything from ME man or New Hampshire man to change my opinion so far. So I don't know what it would take. I can't say anything specifically, but like pornography, you know it when you see it. And we have a super chat from MX New 2004. Welcome. Welcome. No comment, just supporting. We appreciate you very much. Thank you, brother. Our friend Jamie's back in the chat. Jamie always has a good take. Jamie says, dumb question, what's your go-to fast food place when you have to eat something quick? I moved away from Get City and miss the food options. Oh, that's a good question. So I do not, and I'm not saying this to virtue signal. Is there anything more insufferable from people? Oh, I don't eat fast food, right? We all know those sort of people. Oh, I only eat organic. Maybe you don't have that out here. I know we live in a little bit of a bubble because the people are very healthy out here and very athletic, and it's all about the organic. And I mean, you get to a point where you just think that everyone is like that. Like when you go to a restaurant in this area, I mean, yes, there's the greasy diners, and I mean, those are available, but for the most part, everything is very high quality, organic, clean, because the people demand it. And so there's a certain standard that West Coast man has when it comes to eating out in his food. We're very particular about it, very particular about our coffee, very particular about our food, and it's got to be well done and it's got to be locally sourced. We want to know the name of the cow. We want to know where the cream came from, if you get the point, right? So there is this very high standard. It's difficult for West Coast man when he travels, especially when he travels over to, say, Michigan or Wisconsin or the Rust Belt or anything like that, where the standard is not quite the same, and they get their coffee from Dunkin', like East Coast man does. It's a great disappointment. It's such a disappointment that it almost dissuades me from visiting those areas anymore, because you kind of get used to something. So I wanted to kind of paint that picture here, how pretentious and haughty we are about food. But I do eat some fast food. Usually fast food happens when Mrs. W is not around, and we go out dirt biking with the boys, or when we're traveling. My go-to fast food, I'm gonna list my top 3 or 5, whatever comes to mind. Like the first thing that comes to mind when I travel, if I'm in an area and I'm looking, I need something that's just grubbing and fast, and I'm not pretentious, I'm gonna look for, number one, I'm gonna look for a Five Guys. I'm gonna look for a Five Guys. Five Guys is pretty good. I'm gonna look for, now this is not any, well, I will give you order, a descending order here. Five Guys, In-N-Out Burger, Five Guys, In-N-Out Burger, Burgerville, which is a local chain, high quality, locally sourced stuff. They're pretty good as well. You guys don't know, East Coast man doesn't know about Burgerville. Those are 3. I've been known to go to Panda. I go to Chipotle's. No, Chipotle's would be fast food would be number 4, and Panda would be 5. Yeah, that's how I would do it. Five Guys, In-N-Out, Burgerville, Chipotle's, Panda Express. There, that's my list. That's a good question. But Five Guys, it's fun. You should see. So Mrs. W likes Five Guys as well. So unfortunately, the Sweet Loaf has a, those of you guys that go to Five Guys will understand this, has a peanut allergy, right? Now, we had her tested when she was little, and they do the thing on the skin, and man, she swelled up so bad that it gave the allergist alarm. Had never seen it like that before. So Mrs. W is hypervigilant. She doesn't miss a thing. You think I'm detail oriented about those sort of things, man? She's all over it. She makes this place run. So there will be no nuts in the house, I assure you, or anything. I mean, she is the nut Nazi. So she won't take the Sweet Loaf anywhere near a Five Guys, because they have nuts everywhere. They've got peanuts on the floor. They've got bags of them when you walk in. It just gives her an aneurysm just driving by the place. And when we were at Jack's last debate, the kids were debating late, and I said, I'll go get dinner for everyone. So I took the Sweet Loaf when we went down there. And when I told Mrs. W that I was going into Five Guys with her, I had a list of rules and hand washing protocols that you would not have believed. You know what the worst fast food place I've ever been to? I don't even have the words to tell you how revolting and disgusting this place was. This is East Coast. I was in Maryland. It was my first job working as a construction superintendent. I was in Laurel, Maryland. Now, coming from the West Coast, where we have high food standards, you know what I'm saying, And so I was working with East Coast guy there. I was a construction superintendent. I was building, I built the Blinds to Go store there. That was my first store. They gave me a crummy one to see if I could do it. So I was there, and I was working, all my subcontractors and my foremen and stuff were East Coast guy. And so you get to talking to them, I was there for several weeks and asked them about lunch. Like, oh, you need to go, there's a place you need to go. You need to go to White Castle. White Castle has the best hamburger you'll ever have. Oh yeah? Oh, I like hamburgers. So, okay, I go to White Castle. I didn't know what a White Castle was. I'd never heard of White Castle. We don't have White Castle over here. So I went to the White Castle and I ordered 3 hamburgers. When I unwrapped those revolting, first off, it was wet. Like the bread, it was all smashed. The presentation was deplorable. It was actually like wet, like it had been underwater, which is gross anyway. I mean, wet bread like you feed to the ducks. I mean, who wants to eat that? That's what it was like. It was like duck bread. And then I opened it up, and it was the patty was of a cadaverous gray that, I mean, it was such an unappealing, and the smell of it. And the oil that they used for the French fries it was absolutely revolting. It was so bad, I didn't even take, no, I did take a bite of it. I took one bite of it, spit it back in the bag, threw it away, and that was it. I would never darken the door of a filthy White Castle. I don't know how East Coast man could even eat that. I don't even know. It's unbelievably disgusting. And yet, every time I even talk about going over there, someone will say in the comments, hey, you got to stop by White Castle. They have good burger there. No, they don't. We have a super chat from Mr. Dylan Henry. Dylan's been a member with us for 1 month. What about Missouri man? Well, Missouri man would have a leg up because he's close. My granddad grew up in Oklahoma, which, of course, I don't know geography or anything, but I assume that that's close to Missouri. He used to say Missouri. I would say Missouri, and he said, no, it's Missouri. And I don't know what the proper way to pronounce that is. He was from Oklahoma, closer to that Missouri than I was, so I say Missouri. But I don't know of anyone from Missouri. He seemed to have a good opinion of Missouri. I don't know. Just like New Hampshire, man, you're going to have to show me something pretty good. I will give you I will push you up to the front of the line because it's close to Oklahoma, and that's where my granddad came from, and he was a good man. Oklahoma has not been given West Coast status, but it would definitely, I would definitely give it, a little bit of a nudge. I don't know. You'll have to prove it to me. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for New Hampshire man to get West Coast status because I'm going to be completely arbitrary and about what I would require for you to get West Coast status. I don't know what it would be. You'd have to do something amazing. Something amazing, I guess. We have a super chat, a very generous super chat from Mr. Tim Caldwell. Tim's been with us for 2 years. Shout out to you, Tim. Thank you. Goodness, $50. You're still not breaking the internet like Overton did, but that is very generous. Thank you very much. We have a super chat from, he says, I know your feelings on Florida, man, but there has to be some statutes of Florida other than being the king of the memes. I know Florida, man. As I've said, I lived there for a year. I got to experience the joy of Florida, all 4 seasons. I lived in, I was actually down in the Keys, down in Key West, a week or 2 after Andrew went through there, and that's a very interesting place down there. That was for a culture shock. So when I was down there, Budweiser brought down a beer truck that had kegs mounted on the side, and they threw a party called a Hurricane Survivor Party. And if Key West man didn't drink enough already without free beer, it was a recipe for disaster. I remember the next day, it was a Saturday or it was a Sunday, after that drunken debauchery that took place all night with the free beer. And there were dudes, a lot of dudes all over the place, like on benches, under benches, in the grass. You know, East Coast or Key West, man, he doesn't need to find shelter if he can't make it home because it's so warm down there. Provided he doesn't fall in a place where the fire ants will get him, usually you can sleep pretty much where you lay, whether it be on the beach or under a bus. You know, just make sure that you're up before 10, before the sun hits you and puts a sweater on your tongue. But I saw a lot of that down there. That was very interesting. So I was down there for a while, and then I lived right on South Beach, right off of the kind of right in the Art Deco area. I saw debauchery like I'd never seen before there. There were actually dudes that would come in. I used to go to a little local bar. I was building a store not too far from there. So I would go out at night and drink at a local bar. And dudes would actually come in and just sell cocaine, just openly. Just walk down and like tapping on shoulders, and they would put it in little bags inside of little packs of matches. Or I think it was cocaine. I didn't buy it from them, but it seemed to be just a regular thing down there. It was Florida, man. That's a whole nother experience. It is... maybe it's different than it was when I was there, but I haven't been back. I haven't been back. Boy, I'll tell you, man, they've got some sinister creatures down there. So the three things that really plagued me that I remember about Florida that were 5. One of the worst things 6. One of the worst things I ever came across in Florida was the fire ant. You ever run across? You guys have fire ants? Does all East Coast have that? I didn't know about that. We don't have any like biting insects and things like that over here on the West Coast. So what happened was my brother-in-law, one of his best friends had a flats boat and was a big fisher, kind of an amateur fishing guide. And he had a flats boat is a boat it's like a bass boat, but it instead of going in fresh water, you fish the brackish water, where the tide kind of comes in, a little salty, a little bit fresh in Florida. And we would fish for tarpon and redfish and snook. And I love to fish, and my brother-in-law loved to fish, and guy had a nice flats boat, so we were out there all the time. It was super, super fun. I learned to throw a casting net, so it was quite fun fishing. So you would go over, you'd get on the flats boat. So there's so much to say here, I'm getting ahead of myself. Imagine a bass boat, but it's all white. It doesn't have all the gay sparkles on like Southern Man does, with no skeeters, but it's all white with a big outboard on it. They're fast, they'll do 60, 70, like a big 300 Merc, or I think we had a 200 on there. It's big, they're fast. And they're designed to fish off of kind of standing up. And they have big live wells and stuff, so similar to a bass boat, but different. So when you're going to go fishing, what you do is they've got these casting nets, and you've probably seen them online where the guys, it's a lot of skill. I never did perfect it, but the other guys did, and they'd throw it out, and it was weighted. It would open up into a huge circle, and you'd go over like by a dock or over by the mangroves, and you'd throw this thing out there, and then you'd pull the rope and it would gather it in, and you would catch your bait fish, which they were little pin fish, about so big. And you take all these bait fish and you put them in the live well. This was some of the best, the fishing down there. I would go back to Florida for the fishing. Fishing on the flats boats in the mangroves was, for those snook, was one of the best things ever. And so you go out to the mangroves once you catch your bait fish, and then you take one of those little pin fish and you hook it through its lip, you keep it alive, and you toss that out there around docks and mangroves and such. And it's so exciting because the little bait fish is alive. He's hooked by the lip, but he's swimming around. You want to keep him alive because him swimming around in his distress is what draw in those other fish, the tarpon and the redfish and the snooks and all that. And you knew right before you get a strike, because that little pinfish would be going crazy in there because he's being chased, he's being stalked, and you'd be on your alert. Bam, man, you'd hit that thing. And then the coolest part about Florida man fishing is you get to go fishing. It's really hot down there, so you get a powerful thirst, right? Well, fortunately, Florida man has set it up so they have the bar you can access from your boat. So you just motor right in there, and you order your rum runner. And I tell you, man, after about 3 or 4 or 5 of those rum runners on a hot day of fishing with the sun on your head, man, I'll tell you, you don't know hangover until you've had a rum runner, hot sun rum runner hangover. It's like nothing I could ever explain. It's terrible. So that was what we would do. And then, so I'm trying to set up for the fire ants. So we would take our hangover, or come off from fishing, and then we would to his house, and then we would clean out the live well. And this guy was he was kind of a Florida redneck, so he had a trailer. He had a nice boat. He is the type of guy where his fishing boat costs more than his house. You know that type of guy. So he'd have all these extra bait fish, these pinfish, and he would just toss them over in the bushes, right outside of his bedroom window. It was like he was composting them there. Well, fire ants, I don't know if they built a whole colony there or whatever, but they were feeding on those things for like generations. It was like they were infested the whole place. And the fire ant is kind of a reddish color, and when it bites, you've been bit. I assure you, man, it hurts like the devil. For such a small thing, I don't know if they've got serrated mandibles or whatever it is, but when they bite you, you will absolutely know it. I mean, it is, you feel like you're on fire. It's terrible. It's one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. So he sent me over there to go over there and turn the hose on. We're going to wash the salt off the flats boat, right? Well, I got in those bushes, and those fire ants attacked me. And good grief, man, I like to die in there with those fire ants. I think they actually do kill people. So fire ant was rough. And then I learned about the Portuguese man of war. You ever heard of that? I didn't know about Portuguese man of war either, because we don't have those over here. Well, Portuguese man of war, you don't get that name without being a pretty mean little critter. It's like a jellyfish type of thing. And my first experience with it was I pulled in that casting net, and one of those Portuguese man of war was in that casting net, and I didn't know it, and I drug it across my arm. And it was like maybe even worse than the fire ants. Man, my arm lit up like it was on fire, like someone poured alien acid on it. And I was jumping around there and didn't know what to do, and they're laughing at me, and the redneck guy, I forget his name, told me to pee on it. He was shouting at me to pee on it. Like, what? I'm not going to pee. Well, if you run into a Portuguese man of war or anything like that, the ammonia in urine will neutralize it. Some of those guys, if I remember right, I could have this wrong, but I think that's how it was. I think some of those guys would even carry ammonia on the boats, where if you ran into these hateful things that you could clean up. Oh, that was rough as well. The Portuguese man of war, I would avoid that if you could. Fire ants, Portuguese man of war, and then I got to experience a little creature called the no-see-um. And we don't have those on the West Coast either. That's something exclusive to Florida man as well, I thought. My first time I was on Sanibel Island, having a beautiful day on the beach, sitting on the beach, and had my chair and a dog there, and just really kicking back, having a couple beers. I was just enjoying it. There was even dolphins out there. It was just, everything was perfect. People down the beach, not too crowded. You could see a long ways. All of a sudden, I noticed some movement down maybe like a quarter mile down the beach or so, like people running around and gathering up their stuff like really quickly. And I had one of those kind of recliner chairs sitting there in the sand with my shoes off, and I'm watching that. You know how your eyes drawn to attention, like, what is Florida man doing over there? And people were stepping and fetching, man. They were grabbing their umbrellas and grabbing their coolers and running away. And it was moving like a progression. It was moving slowly like a wave towards me. Well, I just sat there and I couldn't figure it out. Like, what the heck is going on? Is there a curfew on the beach? Well, there's these little bugs called no-see-ums, and they bite. Their bite is terrible. And they're tiny. They're like a gnat. It's incredible the pain that bugs in Florida can inflict upon you. Well, they come in swarms. I don't know if they swarm off the coast or what have you, and they'll just invade a beach like the locusts, and they'll drive the inhabitants off, which I saw they did. Well, it didn't take me long to figure that out either, because eventually they got to me and started biting me, and I grabbed my dog and chair and cooler, and I was out of there as well. So fire ants, no-see-em, and Portuguese man-of-war were the three that I remember that are bad. Not to mention the alligators. And then the mosquitoes. Let me tell you about the mosquitoes. So Florida man cannot go outside at night like normal people can. Like we can go outside and enjoy the sunset, enjoy the evening, and no humidity, no bugs, nothing biting you or anything. Florida man, if he wants to go outside, he has to have what they call I think it's a lanai. It's a screened-in porch. It's a fancy word for a screened-in porch. I was at a place at a party one time, and the bugs outside, the bugs in Florida, it's unbelievable. My brother-in-law's like, check this out. He put his hand on the lanai, on the screen, for maybe 30 seconds or so, and when he pulled his hand away, you could see the shape of his hand in the mosquitoes or whatever they were out there that had come to suck the blood from his hand. That's how bad it is over there. So, I mean, I don't know how anyone could live there, to be honest with you. Yeah, you just have to be born there, I guess. There's no way West Coast man could ever live in Florida. I gave it a go. I spent a year there. If it hadn't have been for the fishing, there would have been no redeeming values whatsoever. We have a super chat from MX New 2004. Shout out to you. MX writes, I love the tips and tricks. I wish I had a larger budget on prepping. Really like the content. Keep it up. Yeah, boy, you and me both, man. Never enough ammo, never enough, is it? Yeah, I like showing gear and show and tell and all of that, and sometimes I don't. Half the stuff that I get, I never even end up showing it. People want to send free stuff all the time. It's hard to turn it down, especially when it's something you want. 90% of it, 95% of it, I don't even respond. There's so much of it. There's 10, 14, 15, 16 requests come in. Hey, we want to send you this, we want to send this, and you look at it. Once in a while I'll make an exception if it's a really extraordinary good company, or it's just something that I'm really interested in or like the Premier Armor. That's something I can get behind. I did my due diligence on the company. I looked at it. They're a good company, USA made, and I think there's a need for that sort of thing. So I'll make exceptions for that type of stuff. As a content creator, it's very tempting because it's easy content. You have to feed the daily beast every day. You have to be thinking, what can I put up for everyone? What's going to be guys are going to like to watch, and what's going to be entertaining? And to get something like that gives you a reprieve for a day. You get to do show and tell, which is fun, and share stuff with people, and it's pretty easy. You don't have to come up with something clever. So a lot of content creators kind of get sucked into that. It's really careful. But the thing that I don't like about it is exactly what you said. People will say, goodness, I wouldn't be able to pay my mortgage if I were to get all this stuff that you recommend, and it's putting me in the poorhouse, etc. And I get that. I understand that. I ran into that same problem when I used to watch Nut and Fancy's videos. He just showed such cool stuff that I just kept buying all this stuff, and I don't know what to say other than it's not. I don't want to come off as this is a mandatory thing. This is something that you don't need to have, and if you don't have it, that you're lacking. I don't want to say that at all. There are some things that are important to have. Then there are other things that are just kind of fun. Night vision is not something you need to have. It's a fun thing to have. It's not necessary. So don't think that you're lacking because you don't have it. But having a good, reliable rifle, something that's put together well, that a tool that you know how to use, and if you can build it yourself, there's always a benefit to that because you understand what makes it go, what makes it chooch, and if you had a problem, you'd be able to fix it. Just the pride that comes along from it. When you put something together with your hands, you tend to take care of it better. You're more invested in it. You're more likely to go out and train with it, and it is just something about that. So there are some things that are important like that. Have a good rifle. I think in this day and age, it's a good idea to have an emergency kit and some medical supplies. So a good rifle, a decent medic kit, trauma kit. If I were going to expand on that, wouldn't be a bad idea to have a set of armor, or even just something like I'm wearing here. $275, $300, a good concealable vest that's going to take care of most problems wouldn't be a bad thing to have. But yeah, I get it, man. I get it. Thank you, MX News, for that, though. I sure appreciate it. And our battle chemist has been with us for 1 month. Shout out to you, battle chemist. Welcome. He says, how can you leave out Kidd Valley for local Pacific Northwest? What is Kidd Valley? I don't remember being in Kidd Valley. I don't even know what that is. Am I leaving Kidd Valley out? Is there something I'm missing out on? Our friend Spartan 219. Spartan 219, you should not be donating to the channel here. You're investing in your future here, but we sure appreciate that. Spartan 219 is inquiring about Oklahoma Man. I have a soft spot in my heart for Oklahoma Man, and I definitely have a soft spot in my heart for Spartan 219 because I know his struggles he's going through right now. And I'm proud of Spartan 219 because he's digging himself out of a hole and he's making it happen. He wants to know about Oklahoma status. If you're in Oklahoma ever, contact Overton and I'll feed you for free at the restaurant. I'll tell you what, Spartan. When you get that new truck that you're saving for, or car, whatever it is, moped, motorcycle, whatever you get, when you get your wheels and you get that thing titled and you're out and you're doing your thing, you let us know and we will celebrate here by giving Oklahoma official West Coast status. So you know what you need to do. Oklahoma is, you're carrying Oklahoma on your shoulders. If you didn't have enough burden, there you go. So it's up to you. Only you can bring Oklahoma to the West Coast. So you know what you need to do. Shout out to Spartan 219. We're pulling for you, brother. We have a member message from Gary Reardon. Welcome, Gary. Gary's been with us for 40 months. That's a good number. New Hampshire state slogan is live free or die. Well, that definitely helps. That definitely puts a feather in New Hampshire man's cap, doesn't it? But is he living free? Are you living free? What are your gun laws out there? Like I have anything to speak. Man, it's getting bad over here in the Pacific Northwest. They're taking away our rights. It looks like, if you haven't heard already, it looks like we're really, really close to losing our ability to have semi-automatics. That's actually looks like it's going to happen. Can you believe that? That includes shotguns, Ruger 1022s, everything. So I have a friend that works at a gun store here in Washington, and he said it's absolute pandemonium right now with people buying up everything that's in the store. It's going to put all the gun stores out of business. It's going to probably put Aero Precision out of business, or they'll have to relocate. I don't know what they're doing. Whether or not that'll stand, I don't think so. I think we're starting to see a lot of dominoes fall when it comes to illegal or unconstitutional gun registration, bans. We're watching what just took place in California. That looks like all their nonsense, or a good portion of that, of special restrictions and micro tagging and magazine lockouts and stuff. That looks like that might fall. It's still got to go to the Ninth Circus, as I like to call it. But there is a stay put on that for 2 weeks. Why? Well, we don't get into details, but so it is, with the increased violence in this country and the cities burning down and melting down, there are people that have been anti-gun that are changing, that are starting to realize, hey, I don't want to lose these rights. The world's getting dangerous. I want to be able to have access to this. So I don't know if it's going to stand. Now, we'll have to see. It will be challenged, of course, but we'll see. We'll see. But, here's the thing with that. There has not been I mean, I maybe wouldn't say there has not been tremendous incentive for 3D printed lowers or 80% lowers. And I mean, there is a small subgroup of that that's going on. I know that that's out there, and that's pretty big business and kind of the underground. But they're going to shoot themselves in the foot if they implement these draconian restrictions like they're doing in Washington State. Freedom-loving people are they're going to redouble their effort when it comes to their own manufacturing. That's just going to be the natural progression. And now you have people that were willing to follow the rules and to register and background check and everything that goes along with that. Most people are law-abiding. They're going to the underground. And then they're going to have more, and everything's going to be undocumented, and the situation, just what these tyrants that are sitting in public office, what they're intending on doing, or what they're trying to do, is going to backfire on them, and it's going to, gun possession is going to explode, in my opinion. I mean, tell me that doesn't cross your mind, right, if you were to be faced with that. We have a super chat from Silas Porter. Shout out to you, Silas. Silas writes, Missouri was the gateway to the West. I understand that, I know. Without Missouri, you wouldn't even have a West Coast. Well, the gateway was symbolic, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. But if we're going to do that, we could take that argument all the way back to England. If it wasn't for England, or if it wasn't for that's a nice try, Missouri man, but that's not going to cut it. Even the fact that you got me to consider it there for a moment tells me that you are very crafty. Missouri man is crafty and maybe somewhat deceitful. Giving me a red herring here. Same goes to you, Missouri man. You, of course, can apply, but you're going to have to impress me. And now you're kind of on my S list, so I put you at the back of the line for coming up with a bunch of nonsense. Gateway. Just because you have that big arch doesn't mean that you're special. You still don't have an ocean. We have a super chat from Ty Guy. And Ty Guy's been with us for 2 months. $20. It's very generous of you. Thank you, Ty Guy. Ty Guy writes, Minnesota man here. I'm proud to be Midwest, which is better than West Coast. Love your content. Keep up the good work. Oh, is it? With your mosquito problem, you're going to tell me. And how about your Lyme's disease? How about that? How about not being able to go out into the woods without being paralyzed? I would say not. I would say not. There are dangers in the Minnesota forests. And I was up there. Mrs. W and I took a trip up there because she went to school up in that area, and she comes from those people. A lot of Scandinavian people settled up in that area because it's very similar to Sweden and Norway and all that. So it appealed to them. They like to be cold. But when I take your mosquito problem and your deer ticks and your dodgy cheese, I just don't know. I don't know that I can't agree with you. I can't get with that. That you got a lot working against you with the deer tick problem up there and the Lyme's disease. That's like going out into the forest that's filled with landmines, and I wouldn't enjoy that. I'll tell you that. They scared me to death when I was up there. I heard stories of people that had to sit in the dark all day because of Lyme's disease from deer ticks and all sorts of nastiness. Not to mention the mosquitoes. I think the mosquitoes carry small animals off. Or is that Alaska? That might be Alaska. Shout out to Minnesota man living in a very austere and dangerous environment. And your also, while we're on this topic, your fascination with sports ball is unhealthy, in my opinion. I can't get you got a lot working against you, Minnesota man. I don't know. I just don't see that happening anytime soon. You're going to have to make some serious reforms before we're going to open that conversation. You're going to have to deal with that deer tick problem. We have a super chat from Dad Does Things. Welcome. Welcome, Dad. He says, the Midwest is just the West Coast with more meth. Well, that's not helping the cause, is it? So you not only do you have deer ticks, but you have tweakers. Yeah, I wouldn't be bullish on Minnesota Man anytime soon, but anything's possible. God can work miracles. Thank you for that, Dad. If I needed a little bit more ammunition against Minnesota Man. We have a new member, Dominic Z. Welcome, Dominic. Shout out to you. We're glad to have you here. Thanks for joining the family. And our resident physician, Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper. Welcome, Doctor. Doctor says, glad to see you. The fog is lifting. You sound like you are feeling better. I'm off to work. Thank you again. Yes, you know what I did to prepare for today's live stream was I switched things up a little bit. I went crazy this morning. I had my breakfast first, and then I did my cold shower and my Wim Hof breathing, and I came straight into the live stream. And I feel like that might be a better method, a better way. So we'll try that this week and see how it goes. I'm going to have to be on my A game with General Sam this evening. General Sam, I don't know if I'm walking into an ambush or not. Mrs. W, I said, you know, you probably don't want to look at his content. You're not going to approve of General Sam. I don't know why I like General Sam. I just see something in him that I like. He's very smart, but he's very crass, and we don't share a lot of values. But he asked me to do his channel, and I definitely agreed to do it. So I don't know if I'm walking into an ambush or a trap or what to expect. It could go bad. And my son Jack warned me. He's like, I know, Sam. He goes, are you sure you want to do this? You could be walking into something very dangerous. So I thought, well, I need to be on my A game with General Sam. So I'm going to take a cold shower right before we do the podcast tonight. It's at 6 o'clock. Or we'll record it. I don't know when it'll go live, but probably the following week. We're YouTube content creators. We turn stuff around pretty quickly. Thank you, Dr. Pepper, and stay safe out there. We have a super chat from Ryan W. Ryan's been with us for 2 months. Shout out to you, Ryan. Welcome. Ryan says, after following your channel for a few years, I decided to become a member and buy your book. I'm looking forward to reading it. Well, great. I appreciate that. Thank you. It even has illustrations, pictures that I took myself for those of you who have public school education, so everyone can enjoy it. Thank you for that. I hope you enjoy it. We have a super chat from a member message from Eric Miller. Welcome, Eric. Eric writes, Eric's been with us for a month too. Let's not forget that. Eric says, I'm pretty sure that being West Coast can be revoked. Oh, certainly it can. Absolutely it can. It's like being saved. You can lose your salvation. Now we know that King Saul, the first anointed of the children of Israel, their first king that God handpicked himself, was ordained for great things. He was made the first king of Israel. And he, through his folly, ultimately fell so far that he inquired of a medium, tried to talk to the dead, as well as committed suicide by falling on his own sword. You know, those of us that are people of the book know the story. So that's a perfect example of a man that was greatly favored and handpicked and chosen by God, lost his way, and his status was revoked. So how much more can Vermont man or North Carolina man also lose his status? Now, I have no reason to believe that would happen, but I need to rattle the saber once in a while, just so complacency doesn't set in. So be on your guard, North Carolina man. We have a super chat from Jonathan H. Jonathan's been with us for 2 months. Welcome, Jonathan. Good to have you here. Jonathan writes, 15 days without bourbon. Good for you. Good for you. Alcohol is poison. I have been thinking about that a lot. Now that I've almost been, I didn't keep track. I'm not, I don't know if I can get with this idea that once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. You know, again, I don't want to judge people, you know, and I understand the whole 12-step things, and people lead out with that. And I don't know, if it works for you and if that's what it takes to get you away from alcohol, then I don't have a bad thing to say about it, really. And I'm talking about things I don't understand, but it just seems to me that identifying as something and leading off with that all the time. My name is Cody and I'm a former alcoholic, I don't know that that's the best way to go. I think the better way to go for me and maybe for some of you is I don't drink because I choose not to drink. I drank, I enjoyed it. I had some good times, I had some bad times, but ultimately I came to the realization that I don't have the ability to meter it out in a way that's productive. Where once I start drinking, man, it's off to the races, until the bottle's gone. So I know that about myself. So I choose not to drink, and so I like that better. Would I meet the criteria of alcoholic? Would many of you meet the criteria of alcoholic according to the 12-step process or Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever? You probably so. But I just don't know if I can get with that. Just labeling that, putting that label upon myself. So I've been thinking about that a lot now that I've had some perspective, where I've been able to go through the holidays without drinking, go through the summer months without drinking, and then you start to see how ubiquitous it is and how it's ingrained into our culture. Like, you really notice it when you go out to eat. The first thing that happens when the waitress or the server comes to the table is, can I get a drink started for you? You almost don't have a choice. Even if you weren't thinking about it, it's being suggested to you. And like when I worked for construction, man, you would have been an outcast if you didn't hang around and have half a case of beer in the yard after work with the guys. There were a few guys that didn't do that, and they were never let into the inner ring. They were almost outcasts. And then you go to a dinner party where everyone is partaking and enjoying wine with dinner or something, and when you are not partaking and you watch how people change and personalities change as the alcohol flows, and how difficult it is to be a part of that and to enjoy that, and what a pariah you become because you're a reminder to everyone of what they know they probably shouldn't be doing by over drinking or what have you. So there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure for those who have decided to abstain and to not do that. I get that. And you have to constantly be vigilant about that. So sometimes just having a slogan, or a motto, or something that when that temptation comes, when that idea comes, when you like, I'm going to just make one exception, that slippery slope that gets you back into it, and that's always how it starts. How it started for me is I quit when Owen Benjamin quit. I quit. I was watching him drinking through his live streams, and I watched him quit and went that whole process, and that so inspired me that I quit. And I think I quit for almost a year. That was at the other place completely. And when I quit, I didn't resolve that this is it, I'm finished. What I told myself in my mind is, if I could quit for 6 months, what that tells me is that I control this. I have power over this. Then, if I want to have a glass of whiskey with my neighbor, or if I want to have a couple beers after a motor ride with my buddies, that I can do that because I'm the master of this and I control it. Obviously, I did, because I quit for 6 months. That was in my mind. So my intention was never to stop drinking completely. It was the 6 months. It was just to prove to me that I was master over this. And I remember how I started drinking again. It was after skiing, a brew pub, which is one of my favorite things to do. Had my favorite local beer. And if you haven't been in that scene of when you've been up on the mountain skiing with family and friends, and afterwards to be able to come to the bar and sit down and have some delicious pub food and share a pitcher of beer, you guys know. I mean, I'm not telling you anything you don't, but it's so ingrained in the culture and the local breweries and everything about it. I mean, it's really a wonderful experience. I've had so many good times with friends in doing that. It's really one of the great pleasures of life. Really, it really is. I miss it tremendously. And that's what happened. It was winter time, a good day up on the mountain. Everyone had ordered beers, and I folded right there. I told myself, I'll just order one. And I had 2 beers that night, and that was it. So then it was then it was cocktails again at restaurants, going out, and then it was buying a bottle of bourbon at Christmas time because it's the holidays and all, and drinking around the holidays. Of course, that's what we do, and then. Here we go. Yeah, here we go again, right down the slippery slope. So what I learned from that, from quitting for 6 months, it all started back with 1 micro beer and ended with, now I'm drinking, 3 glasses of scotch or bourbon in the evening, before bed, to the point where I realized, okay, this is not for me anymore. I had my fun. I did my drinking. That's over for me now. It's affecting me negatively. It's affecting my work. It's affecting my sleep. It's affecting my relationships. And I was never a fall down. I was definitely a high functioning drinker. I was never mean. If there was any negative thing about my drinking, it would have been, maybe somewhat neglectful of family time and such, as you can kind of zone out a little bit, in the evening. So I made the decision, it's going to be coming up on, I don't know exactly the time, but it's probably coming up on a year this summer. And I haven't touched any alcohol since then. And so the slogan that I've come up with, or that I use in my head now, is that alcohol is poison. Alcohol is poison. And as simple as that may sound, and that's true, it is poison. When you look at the physiology of it and what it does to your body and what's taking place and a lifetime of drinking, what it causes and the broken relationships, it is literally poison. It is helpful to me. Alcohol is poison. And I recite that in my mind, and it takes it away. If I go out to dinner and I want to order a beer, it happened to me last night. Jack and I stopped at a place where Mrs. W and I used to like to go and have dinner and have a cocktail with dinner, glass of wine, share a bottle of wine sometimes on special occasions. And she came up and said, "Can I get a drink started for you?" And I just thought, ooh, man, that gin and tonic could be really good right now. A little Bombay Sapphire, right? Double in a tall glass. At that, I reminded myself, nope, alcohol is poison. And boom, it's gone. So it's a little trick I play. But shout out to you, brother. 15 days without bourbon. He says, Jonathan says, replaced with GT's Gingerade. Thank you so much for the suggestion. This is my longest stretch without drink in a long time. Yeah, and that's not to be underestimated, Jonathan. What Jonathan's talking about is, if you have a lot of the drinking thing, especially in the evenings, is muscle memory. It's routine. It's the, how does Mrs. W call it? It's the ritual. The ritual. And you'll find that if that's been your ritual, your custom, that after supper or whatever it was, you need something. You need something to hold. You need the ritual to pour. That whole thing, you've done that for a long time, and to take all that away is really hard on you. The kombucha, now most kombucha is trash. Be careful with it. Get the GT's Gingerade. That's the one. The kombucha is a great stand-in. It's a little shocking at first. You'll wonder, oh, I don't know if I like that, but keep drinking it. Keep drinking it. Get the GT's, the Gingerade. That's the one. And then you'll get a taste for it, similar to beer. You know how beer was the first time you had it. Maybe you liked it. I didn't. But you get a taste to it, and then you really crave it. And it's a great substitute. You can pour that. It's got the bubbles. It's fizzy. It's very zesty. It's delicious. It's good to drink with meals. It's an excellent drink, and it's an excellent substitute for those of you who are trying to wean yourself off of that. Good for you, brother. Man, I'm proud of you, Jonathan. Well done. 15 days. That's over 2 weeks. That's no small thing. And I'm very glad to see that you found the GT's. GT's is the best, even if you're not a drinker or you're just a and I'm not saying that you shouldn't drink. I don't want to. I'm not getting up on any high horse here, beloved. I promise you that. I get it. I just am speaking for myself. I have that. Let's go, man. That let's go personality, right? And I always took that that always goes into everything. So, if you can chill and keep it at one cocktail or have a margarita with your Mexican food or a glass of wine, more power to you. But still, alcohol is poison. Andrew. Andrew's been with us for 2 months. Shout out to you, Andrew. Andrew says, what do you think about Indians in Indiana? They have no permit requirements for concealed carry. I went to school with a guy from Indiana. He was quite possibly the dumbest person I ever met. Now, I'm not casting shade, I'm not throwing shade on Indiana by any means. I'm trying to think, I'm just speaking the first thing that comes out of my mind. He was the dumbest person I ever met. He was nice, but dim. I don't know, Indiana. I don't know. I mean, the concealed carry thing, that gives you a little bit of a, it's noteworthy. It's noteworthy. You have a mountain to climb as well, Indiana man. That's all I'm going to say. You know what you need to do. But thank you for that, Andrew. We have a super chat from Logan. Logan's been with us for 2 months. Shout out to Logan. Welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Logan writes that his wife and I are going to Seattle in May for a week and wondering if we can give some ideas of what to do or what to see. I would not go to Seattle unless you know what you're getting into. Mrs. W and I used to love to go to Seattle. We would go up there and go up to the wharf, and when I first started dating her, she was working up there, and I used to go up there and see her, and we loved Seattle. Seattle was a beautiful town. I used to go up there, and during the I was in the bar scene when all the grunge bands were popular, Soundgarden and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all that. We used to go up there and watch them in the small clubs. So I'm very familiar with the town and the culture and all of that. Portland and Seattle have always been very similar. You could seamlessly flow between the two, culturally very, very similar. I would not recommend you go there unless you have to. It is, the last time we were there, we were down by the wharf, which is the big, nice tourist area, and I felt unsafe. And I definitely felt unsafe having I didn't even have my children there, just having my wife there. We had multiple altercations and aggressive panhandling and tweakers and filth and disgusting. I would not go there. That's all I would say. Go someplace else. I can't recommend that, brother. I cannot recommend that. It's terrible there. It's worse than you imagine. I would not go there. I'm trying to think, if there's a workaround. But I don't know that there is a workaround there. Even the suburbs are getting bad. It's a hole. Good luck. Make sure you have your body armor. We have a super chat from Dirty Hay, who says, where does Kansas man fit into the totem? Kansas man. You're awfully close to Nebraska, Kansas man, and Nebraska is going to be a millstone around your neck, to be sure. The fact that you're touching it does not bode well for your status. Now, with that being said, Kansas people are some of the nicest, most honest, down-home, salt-of-the-earth people that I've ever met. So that does help to wash off some of the Nebraska stink. But you are guilty by association. You'll have to prove it to me as well. You'll have to prove it to me as well. I mean, I don't know that you're in the hole that Michigan man is, but you can definitely see him from where you're standing. But that's Nebraska's fault. We have a super chat from Logan. Logan's been with us. Oh, sorry, I already read that, Logan. Seattle. Oh. We have a member message from Freedom Rover. Freedom's been with us for a month. Freedom writes, Texas surveyor here dealing with West Coast rejects on a daily basis. Well, Yeah, that's true. That's true. But we were born into it. You know, it's not like if California didn't already have West Coast status, I wouldn't be given. I mean, you know that, but it's just the luck of the draw. You know, you either you're born tall or you're born short, right? It's just that's what happened to California. I don't know what to say. But you're not wrong. You know, if California does fall into the Pacific, you know, that will completely shake up the whole. I'll have to rethink everything. We have a new member, Joe Fallon. Welcome. Shout out to you, Joe. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Glad to have you here. And Brian M. is back. Good to see you, Brian. Brian has a comment. Brian says, I'm going to the store and start buying and process a few. You know, my education. Let's start over here. I'm going to the store tonight to start the buying process of a few of those X15 Aero lowers. Thank you for the recommendation. Yeah, you can't go wrong with that. Now, would it be my choice? If I had my choice, if money was no object and I lived in a perfect world, I'll give you the order of lowers that I would buy. Number one would be Knight's Armament from the SR15 with the dual magazine. Oh, it's so sweet. So sweet. I've never owned one. But that'd be my number one. Number two would be the LMT Mars, which is the same context, the ambidextrous, slide, bolt release, etc. Super, super sweet. Number three would be a Colt pre-2018 or so, 19. And number four would be Aero. So that's what I ended up with. But if you're talking about price, what does an SR15 lower cost? A strip lower. Probably, if you could find one, which you can't, you'd be better off. I mean, there's a better chance of Minnesota man getting West Coast status than me finding a stripped SR15 lower. To tell you how crazy those are to find. But they're also expensive too. So even if you could find one, it's probably going to bring $500 stripped. I'll bet. Wouldn't surprise me. Probably $450, $500 for one of those. Whereas the X15, which when everything's said and done, you know the quality is going to be, they're the same. The Aero's probably even better, to be honest. The Aero's, you're going to be able to buy that for around $100. So would you rather have 5 Aeros or 1 SR15? Well, of course, we'd rather have the 1 SR15, right? Because you want what you want. But no, I'm with you. I did the same thing. You're barking up the right tree. X15, the X15 Aero lower is where it's at with that Geisley lower parts kit. So yeah, and I'll be. That's going to be interesting, Brian. So I'm going to be. I'll be in the next couple days or so. I'll be doing an update. We're going to look at the LaRue trigger and stuff. We'll talk about that for the members, so you can have some data points, so you can make a decision what you want to go with, whether you want to go with the Geisley. I'm interested to see how it feels. I have Geisleys in my Daniels and Colts. I've never felt the LaRue, so we'll find out together. But from everything I've heard from trusted sources, they tell me that you can't tell the difference, and that LaRue comes in at $79 is what I paid for mine. I think $80. I bought 2 of them. So, and we're going to unbox those, so you'll get to be part of that because you are a member. So thank you, Brian, and congratulations, man. It's exciting to build one, isn't it? Mr. Barrett B has been with us for a month. Shout out to you, Barrett. Barrett writes, "Hey Cody, love the live stream. I've hit day 80 of my 1 meal a day diet and down 36 pounds. There you go, brother. 36 pounds, man. 36 pounds. You know what a 40-pound bag of Sackcrete weighs, right? You've picked them up. Like when you go to the Home Depot or the Lowe's or whatever East Coast has, Menards. I don't know what they have over there, but we have two weights. We have 40s and 80s. I used to always get the 80s when I was young and spry. You know, now I get the 40s. But even the 40s, man, that's a lot of weight. Like if you had to strap that on your back and haul that around for a day, a 40-pound bag of concrete, you would suffer greatly. I mean, we figured when we were elk hunting, if you had to have a pack board on all day, we would often go down and shoot. We had to hunt from the top because we didn't have the money to bring the jet boats in and hunt up from the bottom like the rich guys did. So we had to go to the top with the leopards down there and hunt down where the elk were. If whatever we shot down there, we had to butcher it down there. It was so much work to haul the elk meat out of that canyon because it was all day for one dude with a meat pack to crawl up out of there, hands and feet. It's deeper than the Grand Canyon. Hell's Canyon is, and we used to shoot them down in there. We didn't even want to carry the bones out. So the old guys that were fit enough to go down there, they would go down there. Usually the old guys were a lot better at butchering, would butcher down there, and they would bone everything. So we would cut all the meat off the bone. We didn't even pack the hides out, because a hide is a pack in itself. That's heavy. The only reason to pack a hide out back in those days where it doesn't have a lot of value unless you're a tanner and such, but there was a guy in town that you would take your elk hide and he would exchange the hide for a pair of handmade leather gloves, of elk hide leather gloves, really nice ones, really, really nice. And so that was what we did. So we would, if we shot one within reason, if you could pack that hide out in a couple hours, it's a big, wet, bloody, heavy thing, it would be worth it to get a nice pair of gloves from. So a lot of guys did, but when we shot down in that canyon, we never brought the hides out, just the meat packs. No bones, leave the bones down there. And it was all day. And many times crawling up out of that canyon, it was hand and feet and a lot of shale rock. So it's the type of thing where it's one step forward and you slide back 2 steps. It's it's very difficult. And we figured that a decent size, a young man or a capable man, you wouldn't put much more than about 40, 45 pounds on his back. That was about the limit, because you got to remember, you got a rifle, you've got your hatchet, you got your backpack, you got quite a bit of gear. You'd probably got, when everything's said and done, you're pushing 80 pounds, 75, 80 pounds of gear, crawling up out of there with a bloody meat pack on, plus the pack board. And we didn't have the fancy ones back in the day. We had the old World War II plywood ones with 1-inch webbing straps and no waist belts. Brutal, brutal. This is a true story. It happened to me multiple times. After all day in that meat pack, you'd crawl up out of there, get your rifle, trying to deal with the rifle, and not lightweight rifles like you have today, wood stocks, you know the whole deal. 22, 24-inch barrels. Crawl up out of there. You'd get up there. Some of the guys would have trucks up there waiting up there, and they'd have the tailgate down. You'd back up to that tailgate and flop that meat pack off. And it's happened to almost everyone. Your first step, you'd fall down, or you'd stumble and catch yourself and almost fall down because you've been all day compensating for that weight pulling on you. And once that weight was gone, you'd fall forward. That's a true story. True story. But I understand that weight. So Barrett's got basically shed a bag of concrete off of his body. Can you imagine your knees and your joints and your back? I bet everything is changed. I bet your whole life has changed from that. That's tremendous. Shout out to you, Barrett. That's incredible. 80 days, 36 pounds. No fancy diets, no nothing, just being sensible. Moving more and eating less. 1 meal a day. And there, look what he's doing, 36 pounds. Are there any of you that would feel better if you could lose 36, 40 pounds? You could lose a bag of sackcrete off your body. Tremendous. Tremendous. He goes on to say, this morning, cold showers have really accelerated the weight loss. Can't wait to fast with you guys. Yeah. I'll get with that. We'll announce that. We'll probably announce the fasting day. We'll probably pick it. I haven't talked to the guys about it, but we'll pick that this week, and we'll get started next week on that. Man, shout out to you, Barrett. I'm so proud of you. Congratulations. That's an incredible accomplishment. That's not to be. Don't turn your nose up at that. 36 pounds. I'm proud of you. We have a new member, Mr. Joe Fallon. Welcome, Joe. Joe writes that he's 23 and just married a Midwestern girl. I've told you. I told you that's where you get them. If you have to marry a Western white woman, and I would advise against most of them, definitely stay away from the coast. Don't be getting involved with any of them on the West Coast or the East. The closer they are to the coast or the urban areas, the more crazy and insane and the more problems they're going to give you. But there are some small pockets in the Midwest, in small towns, where you can still find quality white Western women that have a modicum of traditional values. But they're rare. Before that, I would probably go overseas. I'd get my passport and I would go overseas and find a traditional woman. Let these Western women, let them have their cats and their feminism. And, the good book tells us it would be better to live on the corner of a roof than in a palace with a quarrelsome and contentious woman. And what is more quarrelsome and contentious than a modern Western day feminist? Shout out to you, Joe. Joe goes on to say, I'm about to commission as an infantry officer in the Army. Any advice for people who have to spend time away from family? Oh, that's tough, man. That's tough. I think, I can't really speak on this, Joe. To be honest, I'm not in a position where I could advise you. I would seek counsel from your comrades that have lived through this experience. I know divorce rates are very high, and the failure rate is tremendous for people in your situation, and especially with a new marriage, to get started with that and then have to leave is not starting off on the wrong foot. Now, I don't want to discourage you, but I want you to be realistic about what you're getting into. You know how God talked about this. There's instructions for how men should handle this situation in the Old Testament. How it was set up and how it was done, and we should pay attention to this because God's hand was in this, and he gave us this advice for new husbands, how you should spend your first year. So how the children of Israel in the early days, how it was set up is that when you took a wife, a young couple got together, one of the most important things was get out of your family home. You need to be going into your own home. You do not move a wife in with your parents. I know it's popular these days. I know it's done out of necessity, and some people don't have a choice. Not all. I'm just telling you, if you have a choice, avoid it like the plague. There's a lot of rivalry and competition for a man. Let's say you move into your parents' house. Your mother is never going to accept this. There's always going to be competition for you. It's not going to be an easy relationship. It's going to put a lot of stress on your new wife dealing with that situation. It would be better for you to live in a gritty one-room place that's your own than being in the nicest McMansion with your parents. She's got to have her own place. You got to have your own things. You got to have your own way. She'll also lose respect for you if you find yourself, it's a bad thing. God warned, get out of your family home. That was the first thing. The next thing was that the young man was to not work for the whole year. His honeymoon was to last for 12 months. That was accepted, that he would be compensated, or he had worked and saved up, or there was a dowry involved or something. He was to spend that 1 year together with his new wife, enjoying themselves, having a honeymoon, getting to know each other, supporting one another, and to be completely exempt from all responsibilities. After that year was up, he was to return to his trade, whether he was a carpenter or farmer or whatever, but that year was to be set aside as a year-long honeymoon. And that's a beautiful thing, a beautiful custom. And I don't know why God does what he does. I don't know why he gives us the recommendation he does, but he put that out there as that was the standard, that was the way to go. So that was the way to jumpstart, to successfully start a marriage. Now, these are probably not great things for you to hear because you're doing just the opposite of that. You're getting ready to go. I don't know your situation, but I'm just giving you some food for thought. And I'll close with this. What little I do know is I would imagine, and I guess I ran into this a little bit. I never deployed for a long time, but I did deploy for up to 21 days with wildland fires, where that took me away from Mrs. W, and she was left at home to deal with raising the kids. And we lived in remote areas, so there was stress of not having the safety of her husband around in case a prowler came around at night. So it's not to be completely underestimated. Is it the same as a man going into combat? No, I'm not making that comparison. But I can somewhat relate to it. Don't overlook the stress that she goes through. You may think, well, I'm being shot at over here, or I'm having to ruck 10 miles or 15 miles, and she's at home in comfort. I'm the one suffering. She's suffering as well. Doesn't have her mate. She's left to be home. She doesn't have the security that comes with having a man in the house, etc. So I guess be compassionate, understanding to that, and make sure you give yourself every opportunity. But when you're making career decisions, you've got to make a decision. A career in the military is not necessarily compatible with marriage. That's just the hard fact of it. If you doubt that, just look at the divorce rates. So the decisions that you're making, you may have the decision to go into some awesome thing that's going to take you out in deployments and fulfill every dream, but you also made a commitment to this woman. So when you decided to marry her, you no longer are just making decisions for yourself. So the selfishness that you can enjoy as a single man, as a bachelor, pursuing your dreams, pursuing your own things, doing whatever you want to, that's different now. So make the best decisions that you can that are going to keep you as close to her as possible, where you could spend the maximum amount of time, the least potential for getting deployed for long periods of time, etc., if you want this marriage to work. If your career is more important to you than this marriage, then you can't serve two masters. You'll have to make a decision. But good luck to you. Good luck to you, Joe. We have a super chat from Not the Bomb. Welcome. Welcome, Not the Bomb. Not the Bomb says, we are seeing gardeners learn it is better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, referring to converting anti-gunners. Yeah, that's the truth. It's always interesting. As I said, my neighbor and my friend works at a gun store. And so he's on the front line of this whole thing. He works at a gun store in a liberal city in a liberal state. So he says what's so funny is that when the rioting started and COVID, that woke up a lot of people that were anti-gun and changed their minds. And so they all flooded into the gun stores. And one thing that when they were watching the riots in Seattle and Portland and seeing their neighborhoods degrade, they were absolutely shocked. What do you mean I can't buy a gun? I have to there's a waiting period? There's a background check? You mean I can't just come in here and get one? No. And he would explain to them, well, all of everything you voted for, these politicians that you voted for, they're anti-gun, they have made it these rules. They've continued to make it more and more difficult year after year and they were shocked. They were shocked. They were uninformed voters. They didn't realize what they were doing. And this was not just a one or two. This was many of them. This happened over and over again, and he told me lots of stories like that. And they were just indignant. These former Democrats were just indignant that they had to jump through all these hoops to get something to defend themselves. But we have just like Not the Bomb said. They're referring to people are waking up. People waking up. So I don't see this gun legislation, these unconstitutional laws. I don't see them standing up. And if they do stand up, people ask me every day, so what are you going to do? What if they do the semi? I'm going to do. Every man needs to do whatever whatever is right in his own eyes, and civil disobedience is an option for some people. Not myself, of course. Proho follows all rules and regulations, but civil disobedience is an option for some people. Whether that be, well, you'll have to let every man be convinced in his own mind what is right. We have another super chat from Soviet Tanker. Welcome, good to see you back. Who writes, what's your favorite childhood memory? It just popped into my mind. I don't know if it's my favorite, but I'll just tell you the first, like when you said that, the first thing that came into my mind. I was in the 5th grade, and I used to race BMX bikes. And BMX bike racing was really popular when I was like in the 80s. There were municipal tracks, and it was on the West Coast. You know, it kind of started in California, and everything that happens in California, you know, it was a West Coast thing. It was our thing, and we had sanctioned races, and it was a big deal. We did it every weekend. It was my birthday, and I had a bike, a BMX bike. I think it was a Panda, and it was a mid-tier bike. It had tough wheels on it, and didn't have the best Skookum race stuff, but I was racing it. Didn't have any of the cool stuff on it. Well, my dad and his business partner, and I used to ride it to school. My dad and his business partner, on my birthday, unbeknownst to me, went and got my bike at the school, and they took it to the local BMX shop that had all the cool stuff, like the Race Incorporated and the Red Line and the alloys and all that stuff, and they completely kitted it out with the coolest stuff. I remember every single part. I could remember every single detail of it. It was such an incredible thing. And I remember seeing it and just beholding this beautiful thing. So they took that Panda and they took off the tough wheels and they put gold Araya alloy wheels on it, which were much lighter. And they took off the old coaster brake. You know, you go backwards, the coaster brake. They took off the coaster brake and they put on a handbrake, a rear caliper handbrake, and a freewheel. That was a big upgrade right there. And they, I'm going off memory here. The crummy pedals with the reflectors on them, nice alloy alloy pedals. Gold. It was all gold. It was a gold and black theme. It was beautiful. And that was a time when like the Burt Reynolds Trans Am, the 6.6, you know, so that was really popular. So it was the beautiful alloys, the freewheel, the caliper brake, rear brake only, 3-piece cranks, 3-piece aluminum cranks. Took out the old steel crummy with a cheap bottom bracket and a cassette bottom bracket, an alloy 3-piece gold cranks. Oh, absolutely stunning. And an aluminum seat post with a racing seat. And they got rid of the old steel handlebar stem, and it was there was the tough neck, gold alloy tough neck. This is what clamps the handlebars on. But there was a super cool one called I think it was called the super neck, and it was smaller and it had rounded corners on it. It was beautiful, bright gold, like a jewel. I was like looking at a case of jewels when I looked at that thing. It was so beautiful. And they replaced the old steel handlebars with gold aluminum V bars. Yeah, that was the cool thing. You had to have the V, not just the flat bar with a pad on it, but a V, the gold V bars and new yellow grips. And oh, it was amazing. It was amazing. I can picture it all just like I was there. It was one of the most, it was the best childhood moment ever when those two men presented that bike to me. My bike was really, the only thing really left on it was the original frame, and they had completely kitted it out, and it was ready to race, and it was so cool, so cool. I never have been nostalgic. I've always laughed at boomers for, you know, my dad was a boomer, and he was always nostalgic for the things he had when he was young. And it was usually muscle cars. So like the 32 Ford, 50 Ford, 40 Fords, you know, all those things that he grew up with, the hot rod generation, which to us today, I mean, I have an appreciation for it. I know what the difference between a 32 and a 34 Ford, and I know what a 49 Mercury grill looks like compared to a 50 Ford. And, you know, I knew all this because I grew up with my dad with all those things. You know, we rebuilt a 50 Ford with a flathead V8 and Offenhauser carburetors and all, you know. So I get that whole thing, but I never really related to it because it wasn't part of my childhood. Just didn't have those things. But of late, I've had a lot of time down on my computer. I've went back and started looking at the old BMX bikes, and I thought, I might actually like to put together, rebuild that bike that I had, that I used to race. I wish I still had it. It got stolen from me. I took it down fishing and locked it up, and someone broke the lock and stole it. But I thought it would be kind of fun if I could source those parts and rebuild that bike just like it was when I had it, the one that I used to race when I was 8, 9, 10, 12, and the miles and miles I put it on with my friends, in the summertime. We had a whole gang. We all raced. You get nostalgic for those things when you get older. It'd be kind of a fun thing to do. We have a super chat from Joe Fallon. Welcome, Joe. Good to have you here. And our new member, Soviet Tanker, has joined us. Welcome, Soviet Tanker. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for being here for us. And Tyler Hurd. Welcome, Tyler. Glad to have you here as well. And Christo. Christo is our newest member. Welcome. Welcome. Boy, that's a good flurry of members to end on. I'm going to put some good stuff up for you. I'm very keen. If you want to see the new LaRue triggers, we're going to break those out here right now. I'm going to put that video up for just members only. And also, we'll do that top end rebuild on my KTM. Jack and I put some hard miles on yesterday, and that brought me up to 150 hours on the 300. And I'm right at my time to change the piston. So it'd be very curious. It's very keen to see. Here's where you're going to see, if you're a member and you're going to hang out for the stream we'll do for doing the top end rebuild on the KTM or the Husky, you're going to see, hopefully, the benefits of AMSOIL, a premium oil, in the burn pattern on the piston, and hopefully there's no wear. Hopefully I don't have to replace the cylinder head. This will be piston number 4. So 300s, German 300s have to have a piston every 150 hours or so. So this will be piston number 4 on this bike. And this is going to also determine whether I'll need to rebuild the bottom end, which I have not done before. Rebuilding the top end and rebuilding the bottom end is a whole different deal. Like there's some really good channels of some super skooka mechanics that have done step-by-step on YouTube, and I've watched all those, of course. And just give you an example, the video to do how to do a top end on a KTM is about a 1 minute or 1 episode 20-minute video, where the bottom end is a 5 or 6 part series. And I've never got into that, but we'll have to find out. What's going to determine if the bottom end needs rebuilt is the connecting rod. If when we pull that cylinder off and there's any movement in that connecting rod, the connecting rod is a rod that hooks onto the piston on a wrist pin on the top and hooks onto the crank in the bottom end. If when we grab that and pull it, there's any play, any chunk movement in that lower bearing, then the whole bottom end will need to be replaced. And I'll have to decide if I have the, if Proho has the skill set to tear into that, which I think he does. I think if we're careful, I think he does. But that'd be a pretty big accomplishment for me to get into the bottom end and the clutches and rebear. Because once you're in there, then you need to do everything. Go through all rebearing it, all the new bushings, split the case, really get into the weeds with it. But I think I watched the videos. My dad used to be a TV repairman. He's got an awesome set of tools. I should be able to do it, no problem. So that'll be for members. Grape Dank 001, shout out to you. Our second to the newest member, and Mid America Prep. Welcome, welcome. All right, so I'm gonna shut it down. So what to look for today? We'll do the Geisley triggers for the members. I'm going to do the Premier body armor video for everyone. We'll do a long form content. We'll lay everything out, and you can just see some options or some things that will be available and determine if there's something that works for you. And we have a discount code for you as well. So shout out to the middlemen for setting that up. Overton put some work into that, especially got that here for us so that we could see it. I like to be able to have hands on it. I'm not going to pull any punches. It's pretty easy for me to review stuff because I know ahead of time what I'm getting before I even entertain any conversations with them. So, and I tell them the same thing. I'm not making any promises. I'm not using any talking points. If I'm going to be doing a review for something like that, it's just, they send some gear out, it's always the same thing. I tell them that, and it is what it is. I don't pull any punches. So I'll show you what I like. If I don't like something, I'll say it as well. But it's important to have that up front, to know. If I get something free, I'm going to tell you. So I think that's very important. Grape Drank 001, Mid-America Prep. Shout out to you guys. Glad to have you here. Welcome to the family. All right. Thank you, beloved. May God bless you and your families. Please keep us in your prayers. I pray for you guys, and I ask you to do the same, and look forward to tomorrow's stream. So keep us in your prayers. We'll see you tomorrow.